become mixed in with this group, I started to become very ashamed of the fact that my parents didn't fit in. So I started to get angrier and angrier. And then things changed. At 19 years old, I met a girl and I fell in love, and she was not a part of what I was involved in. And we got married, and we had a child, and I can tell you, if you're a parent, maybe you'll understand this, the moment you hold your child for the first time in your arms, it's like magic. And suddenly I reconnected with the innocence that I lost at 14 years old. And my identity, my community, and my purpose changed. Suddenly, I wasn't this leader, this tough guy, I was a father. My community was no longer this fake family that I built around me, this movement, it was my wife and my children. And my purpose wasn't to go out there and try and save the white race like I thought I was doing because it was in danger of genocide. It was to raise a family. So things changed. And I opened a record store because I wanted to support my family and I wanted to remove myself from what I was involved in. And when I opened this record store, not only did I sell to the people that I was friends with that were part of this movement, but I started to sell hip hop and punk rock and heavy metal, and all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I was introduced and had a meaningful interaction with the people that I thought I hated. African Americans and Jewish people and gay people. They would come into my store and start conversations with me even though they knew who I was. Instead of breaking my windows or punching me or threatening me, they showed me compassion. They showed me compassion when I least deserved it, and they were the people that I least deserved it from. And that helped me humanize them, because in my head, my prejudice made them out to be parasites or monsters, and I'd never known them. But now, because they showed empathy towards me and took this step to start a dialogue, like Kathy said, it was the first time I actually was able to meet the people I thought I hated. And I couldn't reconcile the hate anymore. I wrote a book, which I just read from, and I started an organization in 2009 that helps pull people out of these hate groups and hateful ideologies that I was a part of. Everybody that works at the organization Life After Hate is a former extremist. And that's important because we can connect and build a rapport with the people that we're trying to serve. And for the last 20 years, I've been helping dismantle what I helped build and pulling people out of the same groups that I was a part of. This is my family now. My little boy is now 24 years old, and my other one is 22, and my wife is here. She's their stepmom. We've been married for 15 years. 15, right?
Coming up on 13.
Coming up on 13, we've been together.
We've been together for 15. Give or take.
Whatever. So I just want to thank you. That's my story. I'm so glad to be here and share in this culture that we all have as a common thread. But let's not forget that even though we have this identity, it's important that we don't diminish other people's identities as well. That we all have something in our diversity to share, to add to this world, and not to separate us further. So thank you very much.
Sometimes we get into the syndrome of kiss me, I'm Italian, and Italian food is just wonderful, and aren't we great that in 3 generations we moved from nothing to the middle class, and it's nothing but a success story. Well, it's the immigration cost had emotional costs to it, and sometimes it was family relationships, often it was unhappiness in the new culture. Bring up my father, who spent 75 years in the United States, but never understood the difference between basketball and football. So I'll show you what kind of alienation immigration brings about. Our next presenter is an anomaly. He is an attorney and a poet. If you thought that was impossible today, we are presenting the impossible. I'm glad to introduce Adam Segya.
I'm also from Indiana, which is farther away than it sounds. It's only about a 45-minute drive away. But this is my first year at the Literati and my first time at the Casa, Italia. And I want to thank my wife, Ivana, for introducing me to this. It's a wonderful organization, and I'm glad to be a part of it. A little bit about myself, as you heard in the introduction. I am a litigator. Commercial and appellate work is what I mostly do, and contrary to what you see on TV, about 80% of my work is reading and writing. So if you're literarily inclined, the law is actually a good fit. I started becoming interested in poetry 12 years ago when I was in undergrad. One of my majors was English. And what I liked about poetry was that you can express a thought or an idea in a short space, artistically, and veil it in enough mystery where people can talk about it, and you can have volumes and volumes of studies based on 14-line sonnet. So another way in which I'm an anomaly is that most of my poetry is written in rhyme and verse, formalistic poetry, which hasn't been the trend for a while, but it's more of a challenge to write. And again, I think you can be real clever with your use of words. It forces an economy of words that free verse, sometimes you can get away with doing whatever. Not free verse at all. It's a stylistic preference. My biggest poetic influences, my favorite poet in English is John Milton, and then I'm also influenced by the English Romantics and the French Symbolists. And of the 20th century poets, T.S. Eliot is my favorite, so that might give you a flavor of what my influences are. I've had several of my poems published in literary reviews, and the volumes you will see up here are compilations that I made of those poems and others that I self-published through Amazon. So I have 2 volumes, The Spring's Autumn, published in 2013, and In Quietude, which came out last year. I will read you one poem from each. The first poem I will read was really my first big hit among those who read my poetry. It's called Trophy Wife. Galatea, not from stone are you carved, but silicone, breast so firm and overgrown could have never been your own. From atop your head unfold winding lustrous locks of gold, bleached from hues as yet untold, sprayed and moosed and pressed and rolled. Who gave you those sparkling eyes, azure like the cloudless skies? Not your mother, her gift lies underneath a man-made guise. Botox locks your visage tight, in a smile veneered with white, needle-fed your lips invite, kissing air without respite. How the world must think you fair, judging by your haughty air, and your empty smile and stare, as though free of every care. Does there lurk a human heart in that man-made work of art? Each piece purchased a la carte and assembled part by part. Tell me, why have you thus tried so painstakingly to hide the soul that cannot but reside underneath the false outside? And from the second volume, I'll pick something on a more serious note. Oh, actually, maybe not. This was another one now. This one is called They. Who runs the world, whose laws hold sway across all borders? They. Whose word becomes the final say on every question? They. Who knows how nature's forces play in all her secrets? They. Who makes Hazakin take away all things worth having? They. No disbeliever can gainsay a word ascribed to they, and few will contradict the way of formidable they. Who are they, whoever may agree with one, for they do not need names when all obey the word of a mere they. The wise know whose words count and pay no heed to words of they, nor let themselves be led astray by undetermined they. Thank you.
I hear poetry, I'm reminded of Joseph Tusiani. I don't know if you've ever heard of, anybody ever heard of Joseph Tusiani? Okay, well, fine, all of you should take my course. Joseph Picciolini is a poet of the, he's in English, Italian, Latin, and I think he does Greek as well. He's an immigrant. He is a poet, wrote a book of poetry published by the Italian Cultural Center in the 1970s. It's called Gente Mia. I highly recommend it. It's poetry that's easy to understand, and it goes through the Italian-American experience, and it writes about famous characters in Italian-American history, and it ponders the question: two languages, two lands, perhaps two souls. Am I a man, or two strange halves of one? And so I recommend that. You can find him on the internet. I videotaped him once reading his own poetry. You can find that. You might be able to find the text to Gente Mia from Joseph Tusiani. And thank you, Adam, for correcting me. I guess poets can be lawyers and vice versa. Mary Gibson was with us last year, and she was a nice inspiration. We welcome her back with her strawberry fields of remembering strawberry fields, and her writings about being a nurse. Mary.
Thank you and good morning. I'm always the loudest thing in the room. Sorry about that. But I always feel so at home here at Casa, Italia, because this is the exact floor that was in my parents' home on the farm in strawberry fields. So I always feel very, very comfortable here. So you can't imagine my surprise when I received a phone call telling me that I was to be one of the recipients of the 2017 Leonardo da Vinci Award of Excellence given by the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America for my work in the healthcare field. The only thing I could think of that I had done was I got up every day and I went to work for more than 50 years. First as a hospital critical care nurse, and then as a certified advanced practice nurse practitioner. I served in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps Reserves as a first lieutenant and then as a captain. I did these things while pursuing my advanced degrees and raising my two daughters alone. Sounded like a pretty ordinary life to me. But you know, there's always extraordinary in the ordinary. Friends and family gave me lots of advice on the speech I was to give the day that I received the Da Vinci Award. Keep it short, they said. Tell a few jokes. But my granddaughter was adamant when she said, "No, Nana, your jokes are not funny. They're only inappropriate, so don't tell any jokes." So, joking aside, I would, however, like to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to write my memoirs. As a first-generation American, I'm going to put this down because it's heavy, by God, it is really heavy. Okay, we're going to put that right there. So as a first-generation American born to immigrant parents from Sicily, life was hard, but not without its many rewards. My father, Nino Matury, spelled M-A-T-U-R-Y because they changed it when he came through Ellis Island. He was born in 1894 in Ucria, Sicily, the youngest of 5 siblings. That is, until his eccentric mother went to the market one day and she came back with a small boy, about a year younger than my father, that she raised as her own. My Grandma Lenzo did whatever pleased her. My grandfather, Nino Matury, spelled Maturi, was not a kind or loving father, which caused my father to leave home at an early age and live in the streets of Sicily. He returned home frequently, however, because he was close to his adopted brother, Miguel Sedadime. Miguel Sedadime. Italian, not Spanish, I speak both. He made his living by being a pig boy, one who watches pigs in the stockyards awaiting slaughter and shipment overseas. He figured out that those ships would go to America, so he stowed away on one of them when he was just 17. He hid in the galley and ate leftover scraps of food to survive. But when the ship docked at Ellis Island, having no papers, he was immediately turned over to the authorities and sent back to Italy. Vagrant boys at that time were conscripted into the army. There my father was given a uniform, a pair of knee-high boots, a sword, a rifle, and a horse. He took to all of it and the army like a duck to water. He especially liked the horse. After more than a year of training, he was sent to the front lines of World War I, where he was captured by the Germans and sent to a prison camp along with fellow captives. They survived on stale bread, sauerkraut, and dirty water they were given every 3 days. Often the guards would open the gates and tell the prisoners that they were free to go. When they passed through those gates, they were immediately executed. My father and his compadres remained in the camp. It wasn't until President Woodrow Wilson got the U.S. involved in the war that my father saw American soldiers arrive at the camp, and he knew that the war had finally ended. He remained in the army, rising to the rank of cavalier. Then he was spotted by a silent movie company because of his good looks and his appearance in that uniform. He was sent to New York City, where he starred in several silent pictures. His career was short-lived, however, when the company went broke. Soon, it was said, talking pictures would be coming. My father returned to his family villa in Sicily to look for work. But post-World War I reality was there was no work for anyone in Sicily. My eccentric Grandma Lenzo decided she would find my father a wife. After all, he was by then in his mid-30s. After she made her selection, she held a large garden party to introduce my father to the lady. He was furious and told his mother he would remain in his room upstairs and look down into the garden. If he didn't like the looks of the woman his mother had chosen, he would not join the party. He said she was awful. Dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes. A point no one understood from the dark, handsome soldier. He didn't attend the celebration. Several days later, my father, his brothers, and a few cousins went into the Piazza of Sinagra to enjoy an evening of games, music, and socializing. He spotted a beautiful girl with goldish light brown hair and green eyes. He inquired about who she might be and was told she was Maria Shasura, a girl he hadn't seen since she was a small child of 3 or 4. She was then 18, and he was smitten with the lady with her hair fastened into a bun at the nape of her neck. The very next day, he called upon her mother, Rosa Iopola, in the village of Sinagra, Sicily, and asked for her daughter's hand in marriage. A dowry was set upon, and they were married that very year in August. Immediately after the wedding, my father left for America to find work and a home for his new bride. It was 1929, and not a good time for immigration or for finding a job. My mother, who only had a 6th grade education, my father never had an education. He only learned to write his name when he was in the Army. She followed him a year later, crossing the Atlantic all alone on a ship at the age of 19. She spoke no English and was headed for a foreign country, married to a much older man she barely knew. The marriage would last 61 years until my father's death in 1990 at the age of 96. It was in East Chicago, Indiana, where they started their life together in a small 3-room apartment upstairs in someone's home. Although times were bad, my father would do anything to survive. After all, he'd lived through the war and a German prison camp. He found many odd jobs. An older man taught him how to cut hair in his shop at night. During the day, he sold candy and ice cream from a cart he pushed in the streets. At night, he went to Hot Dog John's to wash dishes, clean tables, and scrub floors. Then the babies started to arrive. Oh my goodness. First Carlo in January, and then Angelina in December of that same year. We always said Carlo started the year and Angelina finished it. Henry and Bruno arrived after a few short years' hiatus. But when Henry was hit by a car, my mother knew it was time to return to the farm life she had known in Sicily. So my father bought a car, he taught himself how to drive it, and they headed for the country where they found a 16-acre farm that suited them all. My father had saved every penny he could get, and he paid cash. Shortly after the move to Lowell, Indiana, my sister Rose and I arrived. Farm life was very hard without running water or indoor toilets. We were not accepted by our wealthier neighbors who were German, Dutch, Swiss, and Irish. They called us the Italian monkeys. By that time, my mother had learned English and became a U.S. citizen. She taught my father, and he became one also. My parents worked very hard to give us a better life than they had had as children. Mama worked the farm day and night. My pa worked in the steel mills every evening and or night after his tiring farm work. When I was 5 years old, he was involved in an auto accident while returning home to the farm after a night shift at the mill. He was badly injured, and no one had health insurance in those days. Neighbors, friends, and other relations gave money until the bill was paid. So my father came home from the hospital with many broken bones and a tracheostomy. My siblings were afraid to go near him, but I was fascinated. I helped my mama care for him. He always said that one day I would become a nurse. After high school graduation, my pa took me to a nursing home not far from our farm. I was given a job as a nurse's aide after being trained by the home's very unpredictable owner. She thought I was a genius because I had a high school diploma, which none of the other aides she employed had. In 6 months, I was running the place. It was hard getting into nursing school because I had been a poor student and never learned to read properly. Teachers and other students were cruel and unhelpful, but a kind woman at the admissions office for the LPN program at the Chicago Board of Education diagnosed the problem. She sent me to City College to learn to read. It was like a miracle. I graduated with honors and went to work for Cook County before ending up at St. Francis Hospital in Blue Island. In my more than 50 years of working, like my parents before me, I learned that hard work really does pay off. I learned the old Italian ways of doing the best job you can do, no matter what that job might be. In my long career, I have cared for kings and conmen, princes and paupers, murderers and princes of the church. I even cared for a sheik once. I have cared for black, white, red, yellow, young, and old. Rich or poor, illness makes us all equal in the eyes of God. I can say I was never bored. And I can say even after all this time, it is still a privilege and an honor to be entrusted with the care of another human being, no matter who that human being might be. Since my retirement from full-time work in 2010, I still go to my office 2 days a week to see patients. So, I was unable to accept that Da Vinci Award for myself or anything I had done in my lifetime. I accepted it for all those brave Italians, like my parents, who sacrificed everything to come to America for us. They came in droves from the 1890s through 1930, 4 million of them during the Great Migration. They were the least skilled people to come. They had little or no education or work skills. They were badly treated, and at least half returned to Italy to starve. The ones who stayed knew what they had to do. They took any job they could get, digging ditches, farm work, washing dishes, working in textile and steel mills. They would do anything to stay here and feed their families. They believed in the American dream. They sent their children to learn to become doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers, and business owners. They gave us, the sons and daughters of Italy and America, that American dream. You can read all about it in my books. Remembering Strawberry Fields is about my life growing up on the strawberry farm my parents owned in Lowell. Entrusted with their care, A Nurse's Story is about my more than 50 years in the nursing and in the healthcare profession. These books are available here today and on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. A third book, Against the Wind, will be released at the end of this year. I also plan to return to Sicily to do more research on the lives of my parents and hope to publish Maria Mia and the Making of Nino by 2020. Thank you for listening to me today.
Very good, inspiring.
Loud.
Your brashness is catchy.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
It was. Oh, you might have noticed that I put on a jacket. The reason I put on a jacket is not because I'm cold, but because I wanted to show off the fact that I am a Cavaliere della Repubblica Italiana. Slaving at the Casa Italia for 40 years and making all those phone calls and sending all those emails, and no, I'm very proud of it, and I'll take my jacket off soon. CJ Martello took up the job of Mario Avignone in telling us about one of the greatest places in Chicago. Chicago's Italian, among Chicago's Italians, the Roseland neighborhood. And I think that I know that we need a book on Italians in Roseland. I don't want a book on Roseland inter-ethnic. I just focus on Italians, sorry. But I'd like to see that happen. Also, CJ is collecting his articles and is possibly going to come out with a book soon. CJ Martello.
Good morning, so good morning. Got a little bit to go. I want to jump on the South Side bandwagon. We had a couple of Blue Island people. We got Northwest Indiana represented. And I grew up in Roseland, moved to the North Side, lived on the North Side for 40 years, and then was tagged to write the Petals from Roseland column for the Franois. And so I've been writing it for, it'll be 9 years in September. I've been writing the column. So much being true to my column, I'll be hitting a lot of different spots. The column itself, I must say, I was sitting here praying for God's guidance to give a good presentation. It occurred to me it was most appropriate that I be praying in this room, because 56 years ago, this was the chapel for the seminary I attended. This very room. So I've kind of gone back to my roots, all the way back, let me tell you. It's 70 and it's like, man, I'm getting back to all these things from way back. I bought a house in Pullman, out south. And when I decided to retire, I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my free time? And I've had some theater experience. So I do a one-man George Pullman show. It's a show called George Pullman, the Man in His Model Town. Half-hour presentation I do as George talking about his life. And then the other half is a PowerPoint presentation on Pullman, the National Monument, and Pullman, the historic neighborhood. So I keep myself busy with these. And as a matter of fact, I'm doing a presentation on Thursday in Oak Forest for the Oak Forest seniors. So at the Oak Forest Senior Center. So I came to write the column because I began writing many years ago, very many years ago. I actually remember when I was in grade school, and this may have had something to do with my fondness for words. I remember writing a sentence about going to the beach, and the nun had said something about write something about your trip, your weekend. And I wrote something about, oh, we skim stones across the water. And she thought that was really good, she said, because instead of skip stones across the water, you use the word skim. So ever since then, I think that it touched me in a way that I began writing and looking for words to express myself. So along the way, I found that writing continuously helps make you a better writer. Write often. Always carry a pen and paper, like even little post-it notes, because you'll be standing in the grocery line. This is one thing I learned with my father, who passed away at 87. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, and things didn't come up in conversation. Well, while you're standing in the grocery line, and you see some magazine article, and something comes in about your personal life story, and you think of it, and then it goes away. Well, if you had that pen and paper, you could just dial 1 or 2 lines down. When you look at that 1 or 2 lines, that same memory will come back to you. So I always carry a pen and paper. So I write continuously, and I always did for a long time. You know, I always have. And then when I lived on the north side, I wanted to join a writer's group. And it's a most amazing thing to me. I lived in Lincoln, Belmont, and Broadway, that area there, which is very up and coming, a lot of college graduates and all. So I went to look for a writer's group. There was none. So I talked to the library, because that's where I went to see if they had a writer's group. And the librarian said, well, we don't have a group. I said, well, what if I wanted to start one? He said, well, we'd let you use a room, but we don't charge you, which means you can't charge anybody that attends your group. I'm like, okay. I thought about it, I'm like, well, I want to write. So what do? So I put ads in the reader. At that time you could get away with it, putting notices on light posts. Now it's against the law, typical offense. So the first meeting I had 27 people show up. Now, I'm not a teacher. I actually don't have a college degree. But I ended up with 27 people there. And they were not disappointed. Because I've been fortunate with my background to where I had a set of books out, dictionaries, reference books, resources, and that's what they were looking for. They were looking for a place to where they could learn to put their ideas down. So as a result of that first meeting, I ended up having a group on every other Saturday with a different group, split it into 2. And then after a couple months, I made it one group, because a lot of people fall by the wayside. So I made it one group that met every other Saturday. So I'm very fortunate that I know how to write very quickly. And I could throw a story together pretty well. Quickly. So I would get up in the morning every other Saturday, jump out of bed and sit at the computer and spit out a full-page story of 700 words, and then bring it to my group. And some of the people in my group slaved over writing, and other people were as facilitated as writing as I was. But that's one of the things, as a writer, some people will take an eternity to write, and some people write and spit it out. Other people, I had a teacher at Northwestern who said to the class, oh, I've been working on this article for a magazine, it's late. I've been working on it for 6 months because I keep trying to get it right. But don't try to get it right, okay? I had another one of the people in my class whose mother left him quite a